faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
It's a place there shouldn't be abuse. Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims Jesus.
Well, it ruins your soul. If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of two women's journey through spiritual abuse and escaping from toxic church culture while finding hope in Christ.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
Today, we're diving into Melissa's origin story, who Melissa was before she came to the church.
Yeah, the condition that I came to the church in.
So,
come as you are. Oh, I did. Yeah. I did.
Well, so you asked me, like, if I could sum up my time before the church.
Yeah.
In a phrase or a word, like, how would I sum that up? And I really, really liked that. So how would you sum up your
kind
time?
of starting with the conclusion and then diving into the details. I was the perfect storm of a mess for like any toxic organization. So whether it was this one or another one, I was the perfect mess. I had, oh my goodness gracious, I had the lack of and unhealthy coping skills. I had a lack of boundaries, unresolved trauma, self-esteem issues, you name it. I was it. Poster child. Come get me.
A red flag's dream.
Oh, yes. Have you seen that TikTok of like the things a narcissist would never say? And the guy, it's a guy, and he has the wig
and,
on.
They go on like he like goes on a date.
Yes. I posted it on our TikTok, like I shared it on our TikTok channel. And he's all like, oh, I'm a narcissist. Like, I can't date you because, do you have self-esteem issues and unresolved trauma? Well, yeah, I do. I this is going to be bad. We're going to trauma bond. and it's just going to be, but you're so nice, like, yes, I'm love bombing you.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the TikTok, because there's a guy and he like runs through the forest with like a giant red flag, and so like he'll stitch other people's TikToks.
I've not seen.
And so they'll say something, and then he'll be like running through the forest with a red flag, and he's like, friend.
Somebody should have done that. We have done a lot of diving into like high control organization, relationship type things, narcissists and things like that. And the list of like, these are things that narcissists are going to do, or these are the toxic behaviors, is so important. But the list of things that you have that will make you susceptible is probably far more important.
Yes.
And I was that list. So, but like I started my life's journey. I was adopted from complete chaos at 2 years old into extreme chaos into extreme structure. Night and day difference. I was born to two, teenagers trying to make it in the late 70s. Y'all can fill in the blanks of that story all you want. They came from chaotic families. Parents married like 8-9 times, and just like, so lots of children and step family and moving around. And they continued that. I lived in 6 different states before I was 9 months old.
Wow.
And there was that.
Yeah.
So when I was adopted to the completely opposite spectrum. My dad is an engineer. My mom is an accountant. My mom still lives in the same house I grew up in. She still has the same phone number for 46 years. They moved into that house the year I was born. I was adopted 2 years later. She still has the same phone number.
So like stayed married, super stable.
Yeah, like they were married 40 something years, an accountant and an engineer. It doesn't get any more, and I'm going to say the word linear because my dad used to call me nonlinear. He's like, you are so, that's how he could understand me. I was nonlinear. But that leads into like, I don't even know, like, I can't say anything bad. My parents were awesome. Like they were awesome. And they used their resources and every tool that they had to help me. Like they genuinely wanted to adopt me. They understood the background that I was coming from, and maybe not fully because it wasn't like as open. Adoption wasn't as open back then as it is. It was kind of more like, they were like, my older brother was adopted, so they'd already been through an adoption process, and he's 4.5 years older than I am. And they were like, we're going to adopt another kid. And they went and started the process, and they were like, oh, it could be months, maybe years. And I'm like, that's fine. We want to get on the waiting list, and we're ready whenever you guys are. And a week later, they called them. And it's just because of the situation that I came out of that it was like, oh, nope, and these are the people.
Well, and I feel like back then, like in like the 70s and 80s, we just didn't have a lot of resources when it came to like preparing people for the potential mental and physical and psychological things that come with adoption and being in chaotic environments.
You were telling me, because you have a sister who's adopted.
Yes.
The stuff that they
oh my gosh, the stuff that they had to go through.
Like, okay, I know this isn't even what we're talking about. This episode is going to end up being so long, but it'll be 2. So anyway, we went out to lunch, and I was sharing some stuff with you, some baggage that I have from being adopted. And you spoke into that, and it completely broke and healed that place of me in that moment because of resources your sister was given.
Yeah.
As an adopting parent, you were able to be like, oh my goodness, this is what they told my sister.
Yeah.
And what you shared with me about like the different behavior paths that adopted children will go in, the ones that will either like become more of a victim versus the ones that become more of like that warrior and that overtaker, like, because it was something about me that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And that's what I was sharing with you. I said, I have this thing in me and I can't figure it out. And you're like, oh, well, this sounds just like this, what the adoption age people said to my sister. And I was like, wow. That was the most amazing answer ever. I mean, this was like within the last year. So.
I was going to say, like that. I mean, they adopted their daughter she was born like right at the beginning of COVID.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the resources that are there now, like I'm sure it's evolved drastically.
Yeah.
In the last, 30, 40, 50 years.
Oh, I'm sure. And I'm confident too. They were doing the best they could with what
they were given.
With what they were given.
In the time,
on both ends,
in the time people, they were living in.
Yeah. That for adoption agencies, to what they know now, it's everybody just trying to do the best that they can. And my parents did use their resources, to get the help that they could and do the things that they could. And what's really interesting about all that is there's some things that, because for a long time, I did carry around a lot of like, why didn't they do better? Especially as I became a parent, the things I did, you start to question, but understanding that they did the best that they could with what they had and what they had available to them and the understanding that they had. And then also it did take me having like 5 children and getting to my 5th child, who is like the icing on the cake. She's going to do amazing things in this world, but she's the one who is most like me and encompasses the encompassment of all 5 of them. I'm like, wow, it took 5 of them. Yeah. I called my mom and I was like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I was a jerk. And she's like, what? And I'm like, I was a jerk. I can now see that you did everything you could to reason with me, to help me understand, to tell me, like, you told me these things.
Yeah.
But the place I was at, I couldn't understand, receive, or have any concept of what you were talking about. Like, and I rebelled against it.
Yeah.
Like, that's smart. Go me. To watch my child be like, tell me I'm wrong. And I'm like, no, I'm seriously not wrong. like I'm serious. Like, I need you to understand that but you're me. Oh my goodness. What are we going to do? So coming out of that, you have like things that come along with naturally being adopted, like that feeling of not being wanted. You don't have answers. You don't understand. So many things for me were answered when I did meet my biological mom and I was able to ask direct questions and take the story for whatever it is. So to come out of that and then into that structure is important is because that's what I was being told I needed to fit into.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the way you do life, and this is the way it's done, and you have to act this way, behave this way, do these things. And so that would be probably the only downside, I think, like for my dad, because I even went to counseling. You know, I went to counselors. I remember 3, but one of them I feel like maybe my parents took me there once and my dad said, oh, hell no. And then we never went back.
Yeah.
Or I just have this imaginary counselor in my head. One of the two. But there were definitely 2 that I can remember, and I remember all the appointments with and everything. And so my parents did try, you know, and then as I've become an adult, my mom has shared things with me of like, no, this is what we did. This is what we did. And it was like, wow. Mm-hmm. Like even part of the little like badassness that I have is my mom. And I'm like, here's this lady that I always thought was so like meek and mild and sweet, and no, she's pretty hardcore. Like I was like, dang, I didn't even know that. But so that's one narrative. Like that's the basis of my belief system. Is 1, I was never good enough. 2, I never measured up. 3, I was wrong. I'm wrong. Of course I'm wrong because I wasn't wanted. So that just leads, I mean, you have all of these little pieces that lead to I wasn't wanted. That makes me wrong. Why am I even here? And then, you know, I'll get into, you know, you add the ADHD on top. But okay, so now I'm somebody who makes mistakes all the time. So
and
now,
again, in a time where we have no idea what the heck is going on.
Yeah, that's where I'm going with that. But so, okay, so I make a lot of mistakes. Okay, well, that gets turned into the narrative of I am a mistake. Yeah. So talking about that, though, I was diagnosed with ADHD in like 1983. And at that time, we had very few, almost, I mean, like, in the grand scheme of things, if you were going to measure them, I could probably say there were 0. There might have been 1 or 2 in the entire world of psychology to understand ADHD in girls.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 1993 that they did a comprehensive study. Okay, 1993. I was graduating high school in a couple years. So I'd gone my whole life operating like the formula for ADHD in 1983 was here's a Ritalin. Oh, is that too much? Cut it in half.
Yeah.
What? This is how we prescribed children narcotic drugs. Just cut it in half.
Oh, she falls asleep after she takes
Just
it
too
for
much.
hours?
Just cut it in half. Oh, it's not working? Take 2.
I would imagine, because like you have a church background.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like how did that all play into that? Because
oh, yeah. So I grew up in the church because of my ADHD and my inability to control myself in public school settings adequately. My parents chose a private school. And so I went to first the school at my church, the Lutheran school. And then my dad had a disagreement with like the administration. And he was like, there's stuff that he didn't agree with or whatever, something happened. And then I ended up going to a different Christian school until like 8th grade. And then I would have gone to Christian high school, but I really forced my hand in how I manipulated the system to not go to Christian high school with my dad. But it was always a constant battle. But yeah, there was the confirmation classes. You know, I was confirmed, went to church, worked in the nursery because I have my little brother. So my mom would send me in there to watch my little brothers. And then I just stayed forever in the nursery.
So are your older brothers adopted? Is your little brother?
No. So my older brother and I are both adopted. Now my older brother, he was adopted at like 3 weeks old. Funny story. My mom, I was in the military, so I wasn't living at home. And my mom calls me and she's like, you want to hear a funny story? I was driving your brothers home from school. We were talking about this young man in their class who was struggling with some anger issues. And I said, yeah, it's like Melissa from being adopted. You know how she has some anger issues? And my brothers were like, what? My mom's like, what? Like, Melissa's adopted? They were like middle school.
Oh no.
Nobody told them. Why would you tell them? Nobody told them. Because they were born into.
Yeah.
My brother and I knew we were adopted from day one. And everybody just knew. It was normal. It was natural. My parents didn't hide that from us. they didn't introduce us as their adopted kids.
Yeah.
So why would anybody tell, my little brothers are 8 and 10 years younger than I am. Why would anybody tell them that their older siblings were adopted?
Oh.
We didn't. So they were like middle school, late middle school. And then they found out we were adopted.
Because your mom just was like flippantly.
My mom's like, well, like Melissa with being adopted, she had some anger issues. And they're like, our sister's adopted. So, surprise. But yeah, no, they're not adopted. That was funny. But yeah, no, in our family, there was never any like separation or anything like that.
Yeah. So all of that, how do you feel like that? Because that was like your growing up, and then after high school, did you go right into the military after high school?
Okay. So you've got adopted, as my mom put, anger issue, crazy Melissa, right? Just a problem child. Well, I'm the black sheep of my family, right? So and then I'm the ADHD kid. When I got into high school, it wasn't long into high school that I started hanging out with, the people I wanted to hang out with and doing the things that I wanted to do and, drinking and all of that fun stuff.
Probably like rebelling against
all of it. I mean, I was so sheltered
everything.
And like, I was a perfect storm for that too. Like I am the ABC after school special, right? Like that's all. That's just, I am that person. And so I wanted to get out of my house so fast because I mean, I laugh and I joke and I say things like my dad would say I was nonlinear, but I'm a total creative artist, like feeling whatever. And here I am in this,
in a very structured,
black and white, extreme structure. I consider myself like a gypsy. Like I'm this hippie, gypsy, free loving, whatever in this like rigid, this is what we're doing. And no, I'm like, so I went off and I ended up living with a lady. She was a single mom. She had 2 kids. She had a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I was a live-in nanny for her. And I was like, let me put it to you this way. So I technically, like, I have a high school diploma and I graduated high school, but I did that in the long way. I took the long way around. And so I was very fortunate to have people come in and like get me into the right things and stuff because I was done with school. I turned 18 my senior year. And so I dropped myself out of high school, but then I ended up going back and getting my diploma at another high school before my class even graduated. So I dropped out of high school on my own, graduated before the rest of my class. I went out before I dropped out of high school. I went out on a Sunday night because line dancing was all the rage in Orange County, California, right? And they had 18 and older clubs, right? And whatever, you could go at the bowling alley. The bowling alley had line dancing. Okay, like, so I went and hung out with all the line dancing people, and I came home 2 weeks later. Like, my parents were calling the school to see if the school, like, not the school calling my parents, like, is she homesick? No, my mom was like, has she been to school? They're like, no. I dropped out right after that. So that just shows you, like, the lifestyle that I was going after there. And then I ended up nannying for this lady, and she helped me with the recruitment because I wanted to go in the military and everything. And she was actually in the reserves. And so she introduced me to her recruiters that she knew, and they helped me do the whole high school thing. They helped me, they got me going in the right direction. And so I knew I was going in the military, but she was moving across the country, and she was marrying this Marine that she had met who was stationed in, California there. And he got out and he went back home, and he was like, yes, move out here. We're going to get married. This is all going to be great and wonderful. So she was like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go along? You could still be our nanny. Yeah. Because you're going into the military anyway. And then who knows where you end up there, but we'll take you. I'll take your help while you're there. Right. So we load everything up in the car and we start driving. And 7 hours after we started driving, which means we are out of the state of California, we are into Arizona, he calls and breaks up with her on the phone.
And like she has her kids and everything.
2 kids and all of her stuff in a pickup truck.
Oh my gosh. That poor woman.
Stranded in the middle of Arizona at like 6 a.m. in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
So, I don't even know. So.
And you're like 18?
And I'm 18.
So it's not like you have the cognitive ability to like Okay, here's what we're going to do.
This is what we're going to do. And so this woman is like, well, she's like, well, we can do whatever we want now. And I was like, dang, you really can. Like, where are we going to go? Like, so we had a little like a little pit stop, like at a rest area. That's really where this is happening. It was like, or a gas station parking lot. This wasn't like, and this was like a 20-minute powwow. What are we going to do? And I had just come back. I had like taken off on a road trip. And a friend of mine's grandparents lived in this cute little town in like Missouri. And I was like, this part of Missouri is so just cute and quaint. And I really enjoyed it. It seems like a very nice place to live. And she's like, well, let's go check it out. And so we drove to this little town. There's like, and turns out there's like a college there. There's like a bigger town. Like, we ended up in the bigger town. But we got there, and within 24 hours, she had a job at the grocery store and an apartment for us to live in. Wow. This woman was like, she was badass. Yeah. And she built her life there. I was leaving to go into the, I had delayed my entry into the military because I didn't want to run in the summer. So I said, no, I'll go in December because I hate running, and I hate running when it's hot. Yeah. So I will run when it's snowing because you get hot when you run. So I went in December, and then I ended up with my son Warren. And so then I ended up moving to Colorado, and I ended up married to my first husband, which was a convenience of, there are great benefits to being in the military and being married. And so we had decided that, because he was like, well, you should move out here. I'm stationed in Colorado. You should move out here. And I was like, find me a place to live and I'll move. Other than that, I'm chill. I have my own apartment. Yeah. You know, I'm going to have this kid. We'll be fine. It's cool. So whatever. I'm not doing anything. Like, I was like, whatever. You want me to move there? I'll move. I'm whichever way the wind blows, right? So he was like, well, here's the deal. He's like, I can't afford your apartment, you know, like to live on base, like, and then to have an apartment too. Like, he goes, but if we get married, then we get housing, and then, you know, we can live in the same house. Then I don't have to live on base. Yeah. And I'm like, cool. Sounds good. You're going to give me a roof over my head. I will move to Colorado. So I moved to Colorado, and that was the best. I just want to say, like, part of me is still jealous that didn't work out. Nothing about that was healthy, but I had the best life. I had the best life because he was gone all the time. He was he was in a unit. Secret to successful marriage. Secret marriage. Different states. No. Countries. It's fine. So he was in a unit that was gone all the time. Like, they would be gone on training for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. They would be home for 2 weeks. They would leave for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. It didn't, you know, depending on what they were doing, they were constantly gone. I drove to and from Colorado to California to see my mom and hang out with my friends, and then back for like so many times. Yeah. In that first year, because I'd be like, peace out. We're good here. Lock the door. I'm going to go to California. I'll be back before you get back. Yeah. You know, like, I could do whatever I wanted. And so life was really good when he was gone. And then I would have to toe the line when he was back. And so every time he would come back, it was like just little glimpses of, like, I knew I had to toe the line, but I was just like, oh, it's because I'm sharing my life with this person, so now I have to make space for this person. Yeah. But it wasn't until, you know, enough time had gone by that it was really like, oh, this is more than just like, I'm sharing this space with you. Like, there's some red flags that I definitely ignored. When I was pregnant with my second son, like, we'd go to the store and I had to get whatever was on the list. He could put whatever he wanted in the cart.
But you could.
But I could only get what was on the, like, if I wanted, he's like, it's not on the list. But I want these Oreos. I am 9 months pregnant, and if I don't get and you won't let me put chocolate ice cream in the cart, like, you might die in your sleep tonight. That's gonna happen. But just little weird things like that, and just like his level of it's not even like a neat freak, because I would have never classified him as a neat freak, because it wasn't about neatness necessarily, but things had to be a certain way. And if they weren't, you knew it wasn't okay. And all of that was fine. Like, these weren't...
So it was more control.
Yeah, there was definitely...
Instead of like a compulsion that it has to be clean. It was more about control.
There was a lot of control stuff. but nothing that, like, even now I think about it and it was like, okay, he just was more that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still wouldn't even be like, you would have had to have a magnifying glass to see the red flags. And then he ended up getting stationed in Korea for a year. So, hey.
Even better.
Yeah, except for the fact that he made me go move with his mom because he was going to be gone for a year. And this is when like the door opened to like, here's my freak flags. They're going to fly. Because I was like, I'm totally fine.
Yeah.
He's like, no, you can't stay by yourself with 2 kids. I'm like, I'm going to be living on a military base. I'm in the military. I am a United States soldier. I'm quite capable of raising 2
I can do this.
Small children by my, wait a minute. Like, so we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and surprise, I lost. And so he moved me to this little tiny nowhere town in Texas to live with his mom, where I was there. It lasted about 9 months. And
how close were you with his mom before you moved?
Not at all.
Like,
I didn't know the woman.
Like, had you ever, like...
No, I don't think I'd ever met her before.
To
be honest with you, I'm trying to think, had I ever met her? I might have met them once or twice, because we might have visited them. Mm-hmm. Probably we visited them. Yes. I want to say that there was, before he went to Korea, we had visited his mom and his grandparents at least once, like on a Christmas or whatever. Yeah, because we got stuck in a town one time trying to get back to Colorado. And then I had to go live with her, and she had a 9-year-old daughter. And then that lasted about 9 months, and then it all just blew up. And I used to have this phrase of, if you don't want me here, fine, I'm leaving. So I packed up all my stuff one day in 24 hours. I went and got a U-Haul. I was like, fine, you don't want me here? Peace. And I loaded everything up and I drove myself back to Colorado. I got an apartment and that everything was good. Well, he was mad.
Oh, yeah.
And a couple of things like that were leading up to that, like that I should like. So his mom would work like 6:30 to 6:30. She worked 12-hour shifts, like a 4 and 3 split, something like that. So one week she would go to work at 6:30 in the morning and work all days. And then the next week she would work nights. So she'd work at 6:30 at night and get off of work at 6:30 in the morning.
And then sleep all day.
Okay. So yeah. So, but she was coming home at like, we're either not up or getting up or eating eating breakfast or eating dinner. One of the two. Yeah. But she would tell her son that I wasn't feeding the kids. And I'm like, or she would come home from work, she'd be like, every time I come home from work, the kids are hungry. Well, they're either just getting up and they're hungry for breakfast, or she comes home and I'm in the middle of cooking. Yes, they're hungry. What time is dinner? 6:30.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and they're little kids. They're hungry all day.
And they're always hungry, right?
They're hungry all day.
But I was also like feeding her daughter and making sure her daughter got to school and stuff. So anyway, whatever. Like it was just weird. Like, and so he got really, really mad. And then he was really, really mad that I moved back to Colorado and so he hated the apartment. Of course, he hated it because I picked it out.
This is a great place to pause, so we are going to stop your story here, and we will pick up next week with the second half of Melissa's origin story.
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.